small email list, big business impact, the power of newsletters to drive B2B growth. To introduce myself, because I know there are some people in here who do know me. Many of you don't, and it's always lovely to see fresh faces. So I'm really glad to meet you all. I am Corinna vanGerwen. I am a content strategist and editor. I help small B2B service businesses with their email strategy and content planning. My background, I got my career start as a magazine journalist. I worked at a lot of Canada's top consumer publications in home decor, lifestyle, parenting. I've worked at Chatelaine, which for US people, that's sort of the equivalent of Good Housekeeping. I've done work for Style at Home, which is the equivalent of Elle Decor. And so that's the lens through which I look at everything. It's an editorial lens. My focus is on content because I strongly believe that you can do all the tactics, growing the list, checking, making sure your call to actions are good, watching your metrics. But if you don't have good content, who cares? You're not going to attract the readers. They're not going to read your newsletter. They're not going to click through. They're not going to trust you, and they're not going to buy from you. So that's why my focus is on editorial is on the content, on the written content, because I strongly believe that if you don't have that, what do you have? What are you providing? Right? Just a collection of names, and there's no value there for the people who are signing up for your newsletter. So we do have people, anybody who is joining us late, we're putting in the chat what you do, if you have a newsletter, what the newsletter is about, and a link to subscribe. We'll get some new newsletter subscribers. So just a quick show of hands or yes in the comments. How many people here do have newsletters? How many are we looking at? Okay. Excellent. And is it a small list? Do you consider it a small list? Is your newsletter a small list? I think pretty much anybody who has a newsletter thinks that their newsletter is small. It doesn't matter what size it is. So I just want to, just for curiosity, for my curiosity, but also so that other people can see what people consider a small list, I'm putting up a poll here, and I want to know what size your list actually is. Like, how many people are we talking about when we're talking about a small list? So we've got a variety there. We've got some people in 0 to 100, under 100, some people between 100 and 500, and up to 1,000. That's amazing. So it's most people are under 100, which is fine. That is totally fine. And I bet the people with under 100 are probably like, oh, 1,000, that's a great number. So you can see the results there for a minute. I think part of the reason why we all get obsessed with list size is because that's the messaging that we see all over the place. How to grow your subscribers, here's how to get more subscribers, and constantly seeing people share like, oh, I only have 10,000 people on my list. How many do I grow? Like, how do I grow that bigger? Or people talking about list size that are like 50,000 or even more, 500,000. And so it's hard not to get caught up in the idea that whatever size your list is, it's too small. But that's sort of the whole premise of what I wanted to talk about today, is that you can do a lot with a small list. It does not need to be huge. So just to put everything in context of why some of that pressure exists is I'm just going to share here. There we go. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that we see sorry, give me 2 seconds here. A lot of the stuff that we see out there is for e-commerce, and everybody can still see my screen, right? Okay. Is for e-commerce and creators. A lot of the messaging that we see around newsletters and around email marketing are for those audiences. And if you're running a B2B service business, your small business, though a lot of those tactics, some of them are totally relevant, and I'm not saying they're not good, but some of them just aren't relevant to you. So when we talk about e-commerce, those are all your product-based businesses. That's email marketing. And I know I did get a question about the difference between email marketing and newsletters. E-commerce is email marketing. The primary purpose of those emails is on products. They want to drive sales, and a lot of times they want to drive immediate sales. So those are your things like the stuff that you get from the Gap or from whatever store that you really like. You sign up for their newsletter list and they send you product recommendations. A lot of times it's very, very product focused. Here's what's new in store and all that. And then what they're trying to do is get you to click immediately or just keep reminding you. It's very, very sales based. And what that means is they're playing a numbers game. So they're sending tons and tons of emails because the click-through rate and the sell-through rate is low. It's usually anywhere between up to 5%, which is a pretty standard number. You've probably heard that before. And that's not what we want as B2B service providers. We're not trying to sell immediate sales, often depending on what you're selling or what products, whether you have specific products. You're not trying to sell things immediately. You're building up relationships. The other types of advice that we see out there are aimed at creators, where the newsletter, these are your newsletters. This is what people typically think of when they think of newsletters. These are your Substacks. In these cases, the content itself is the product. So the goal is to get lots of subscribers because what they're doing is they're either selling subscriptions or they're selling sponsorships, and it's the content itself. So they may have the newsletter and then also a YouTube channel or some other form of content. They might have books that they're selling. It's the content itself that they're selling. And both these require lots and lots of eyeballs. They need tons and tons and tons of people in order to get the volume that they need to be able to make the sales that they need. Let me just check here. I seem to have, there it is. Okay, sorry. I was just going to say, I seem to have lost my chat window and I have found it again. So, Substack. Okay, so Substack is just a newsletter platform, kind of like Medium. It's a place where you can write your newsletter and send it out. It has an environment where they recommend like a referral network. So when you subscribe, you can it's also a bit of a social aspect to it, where you can see other recommendations. Like when you subscribe to something, you get prompted to subscribe to other Substacks, and it's all within that platform. So it's just another platform, really. So wherever you write your content, a lot of people, it has become sort of like Kleenex or Google. It's just a word that people use as opposed to saying newsletter. So yeah, both for e-commerce and for creators, they require tons of eyeballs. And this is a very, very similar concept, particularly in the case of creators, as it is very similar concept as in magazines and media. The people that read and watch the content is one audience, but they're not necessarily, not all, like a magazine you will sell to a person, but the magazine makes most of its money from selling the advertising. And so particularly for creators, where they're making their money is in the volume of people that they have that they can then sell to sponsors or advertisers. And there is sometimes crossover into B2B service providers who will also sell subscriptions or sponsorships. But that creators specifically work around that. And that's why volume is really important. When we get to small businesses that are service providers, the main thing that they're doing with their newsletter is displaying their expertise. They're building relationships, they're building trust, and it's a bit of a hybrid between email marketing and newsletters. So newsletters are typically used to describe things where it's about the content, and email marketing is when it's just about sales. So things for e-commerce. And the newsletters that B2B service providers write typically take the form of a newsletter, but they are part of your marketing. It is email marketing. So I consider them a hybrid, which is why I use the terms interchangeably. There is a difference between them, but for this particular audience, it's both. So yeah, when you're creating content for your newsletter, it is very much about building trust. Lots of service providers, it's a long lead time when you're selling. And it takes time to build up the trust of your people to buy from you, because you're typically selling higher priced items, right? You're not selling a $10 pair of earrings or even a $100 coat. Whatever it is, it's usually a lot higher in price. And so it takes time for them to trust you, which you can do through your content. And there's also this element of maintaining those relationships, so making sure they don't forget who you are, right? So I just want to give you a couple of examples of content from small lists. So this is I used to run a business as a gift stylist, where I would work with PR and marketing agencies, and I would wrap the gifts that they would send out to media and influencers. They would send out a lot of swag, free swag, to promote whatever products of their clients. And what I did was I ran my newsletter was once a month, and it was a holiday calendar of all those really fun holidays, like, donut day, hang out with your dog day, walk bare feet in the grass day, all types of fun days like that. And I selected the days that made most sense for the types of clients that I wanted to work with. So particularly around food clients, and any type of thing where I thought they could maybe do a gifting program, some sort of campaign where they would send media and influencers gifts around that theme. So one of my clients sent out stuff for National Coffee Day, where they sent out some coffee. They had an actual full sweatshirt, sweatpants with all their branding on it, and it was around National Coffee Day. The purpose of this newsletter was not to get them to buy. The purpose of this newsletter, I had less than 200 people on this list. It was to make sure they didn't forget who I was. So I had a reason to get in contact with them every month. And it also made them think outside of the holiday season when they could possibly use their services. It was a little prompt that, hey, maybe we should run a campaign around this theme for this product. Oh, that would work really well for our gardening day, would be a great one for our, Home Depot campaign or whatever, right? So that was the main, I wasn't trying to sell, it was just to keep in touch. And I had got lots of great feedback from my clients and worked with them on days outside of the holiday season when they would be giving gifts to their client, to media and influencers. The next example is, given there were less than 200 people on this list, this is still considered, this is a email called The Content Technologist by a woman named Deborah Carver. She's not a client of mine, but a wonderful, wonderful writer, very, very knowledgeable about the technology that supports content creation and distribution. So she's working with large publishers and anyone who has a really strong, robust content marketing platform. Her newsletter list is 2,000. So much bigger than the 200 that I had on my list. But again, still considered small for her in her mind, as well as for people who have email lists of 50,000, 200,000, they would consider it a small list. She sends out weekly, and hers are 2,000 word essays. Usually, sometimes she does roundups of links, and they're very well written. So if you're ever wondering, oh, what makes it, like, is there a too long email? It depends. It really depends. As you can see, like she's got a good following on this, and her client roster is entirely filled with people from her email list. It's taken her about 5 years to build up to about 2,000 people. And they're all her clients are from her email list. So it's taken about 5 years to build up her reputation and her knowledge. And what she's sharing in these essays shows her thought process and how she works. So she's really establishing trust in her methodology. And for her, a full client roster is 8 in a year, 8 people. So out of 2,000, that's, if I did my math right, that's 0.04%. So that's actually a much lower sell-through rate if you want to compare it to the e-commerce rates of 5%. But that's all she needs, right? So even if she had a smaller email list, she'd probably be still filling up her roster. So just to give you a little sort of context of how a small list can help you. Now, this is sort of the meat of the day. You need good content to attract people. I talked about this before. Nobody cares. Before I get into this, any questions about anything that I've gone over so far? Well, good. Yay. Okay, so there's 3 things that make great content. And again, this comes from my editorial background. You have to know who you're writing for. You have to know who your audience is. You have to provide value to your audience. And you have to, because this is email marketing, you're supporting a business. So if you were like magazines, they know who they're writing for, and they need to provide value for that audience. And those are the 2 things that are really important. When it comes to content marketing, you also have to know how it supports your business goals. So what's the job of your newsletter? If you miss one of those, so if you miss out on providing value to your audience, you know who you're writing for and you know what job it's doing. If you're not providing value to your audience, they don't care. No one cares. If you don't take into consideration how your newsletter supports your business, and you know who you're writing for, and your audience is getting value, because it's not doing its job of supporting your business, it's a waste of your time. And if you don't know who you're writing for, you could be writing for the wrong people. You could be providing them great value, but it's going to be for the wrong people. So I'm going to get into each of these a little bit more detail. So who are you writing for? For those with newsletters, a bit of an assessment for you. If you don't have a newsletter, think about these as far as when you want to set up your newsletter. This is sort of the framework for how to figure out what to write about and what to include in your newsletter. So who's your ideal audience? Who's the model person for your newsletter? Very, very often it will be the same as who your ideal client is. There are cases where it's not. I'm not going to go into that detail, but usually it is your ideal client. Okay. I want you to think about what percentage of your email list actually matches that profile of that person. Do you even know if they match that profile? So typically, if you see you have great engagement and you're like, oh, but I'm not selling anything, this might be where the problem is that who's on your email list isn't who your client is, or isn't who you're trying to reach. I see this a lot with service providers, because you tend to geek out and want to share information about what you're really good at, right? So if you're an artist, you can start geeking out about the methods of how you create your art, and the techniques that you use, everything like that. But then what happens, or if you're a writing coach, you start geeking out about details on how to run your business. What you end up doing is attracting the people that are the same as you, so your peers. And what you want to do is attract the people you're selling to. So that's a big reason why with my gift styling business, I never shared, I didn't share how-to information. That business started as a blog where I was sharing how-to, but as it progressed into servicing businesses, I switched my strategy. And if I had shared how-to content, I would have been attracting either other gift stylists or people who were going to do the gift wrapping themselves. And what I wanted to do was attract the people who are going to hire me to do the gift wrapping for them. Let me just check my notes here for a minute. Let's see. Okay. Then the next thing you want to do is consider what value your newsletter provides to your readers. So why are your subscribers reading your newsletter? What do they get from it? Do they actually read your newsletter? So this is going to be in your open rates and in your replies, right? If you're getting replies of people saying, oh, I loved how you talked about this, then you know your people are reading your newsletter. If it's just crickets, it's possible that you're not providing the value to them. What happens here is a lot of times you get business owners who start talking a lot about themselves. So it's very much from the first person, very much, I did this and I was really excited about my clients doing this. And it doesn't position the content as how it's valuable to the person. So to see whether you're actually providing value, take a look at what the engagement is, what the open rates are, and what your replies are, right? And if those replies are really engaged. Provide value, but still leave room for them to purchase from you. So this is the nut of it, right? So a lot of times it is, let me think if I can think of an example. Okay, so in the case of Deborah Carver's newsletter, what she's doing is she's writing essays about how she thinks about content technology. And so that's the platforms that people use. She talks about information architecture, how all the content on a website is set up, how things link back to each other, and the technology that people use, the platforms, SEO, how things are switching with AI and stuff. And she's sharing reviews of technology, and she's sharing how she thinks about that technology and how she thinks about content and information architecture. She is not telling them how to do it. So there's a lot of value there for them because they're like, okay, is this technology worth it? Or how should I be thinking about it? It's very, very high level stuff, but she's not giving them the how to. This goes back to the how to, right? Let's see, in some cases you can do little tips, but where like there are a lot of service providers who will provide tips. So coaches, for example, maybe it's, okay, here's a breathing technique for when you're anxious. But there's a personal service element to coaching that you cannot get through email providers, right? If you're a graphic designer, you can provide information on, okay, well, you need consistency on your branding across the thing, but you're not teaching them how to use the tools. And there's value in knowing how to think about the work that you do, right? We can dig into that a little bit more if you have, Carrie, if you want to talk around yours at the end. I don't know if that helps, but yeah, we can dig into it a little bit more later. Okay. And then the third piece that I want to talk to is about what's your newsletter's job? What's it doing for you? So this is what are your business goals, right? And how is your newsletter supporting that? So in the case of my newsletter for the gift styling business, the goal was to make sure that because there was a long lead time, the goal of my newsletter was to make sure that they didn't forget me outside of season and that they thought of me for additional uses, for additional events, additional campaigns. It was about keeping in touch. That was the primary goal, keeping in touch so that I don't lose touch and aren't bombarding them with emails. Hey, do you happen to have any campaigns? I just wanted to make sure that they thought of me when something came up, when they were brainstorming ideas of how to do a certain campaign. You have lots and lots of email marketing or lots of marketing options, lots of strategies you can use. And where does your newsletter sit in that marketing ecosystem? So with e-commerce, newsletters, email marketing sits in that system as in that's the sales, like that's the point of purchase. That's when people buy. That's unlikely with B2B service providers, which means the next step from your newsletter is typically going to be maybe a discovery call. So you have to figure out where it sits within that. What do you want them to do from this point, right? And that can change. Sometimes it's building that up and it's like, okay, maybe you do a free monthly talk, or you have a community. The newsletter is to get them into that pipeline. Maybe the job of it is to build up your expertise and make sure that they really, really trust you when they're like, oh, we need to hire that person to do whatever it is that you do, right? So just think about on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you think the current newsletter is doing its job. You'll know if it's doing its job. Typically, newsletters, if a subscriber is if a subscriber is talking to you on a sales call, typically that sales call will go easier than if they're not a subscriber, because they will be familiar with how you think and how you work. Okay, question. There are people who have found success while also giving them how to, but people will hire them because it's not an area that they want to learn to do. Yeah, very much so. That's true. That's true. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking if I had anything to add to that. I do not.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. There was
Yeah.
something that you said earlier that Romina loved, that a tip, don't share the how-to, and my audio cut out right after that. You said don't share the how-to, do share blah blah blah, and I didn't hear that phrase. So either Romina or Corinna, if you want to say what it was
Oh, yeah.
that originally said.
Yeah, so you want to share how you think about the work you do. How you approach it, your your values around it. So, yeah, so it's not, so in the case of, say, elder care, if you were talking about providing elder care services, it would be not so much, okay, here's how to provide a bath, right? It's talking about the why a bath might be important, why, like how frequent it has to be, some of the safety considerations, some of the tools, or the uh,
You said approach. That's what that really
mhm,
helped me. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Okay. So just to recap, you want to know the who, you want to provide value, and you want to know your newsletter's jobs. This is going to help you attract the ideal clients. The This comes back to it's also going to help you with writing. So once you know these, it becomes a lot easier. This is the basis of your newsletter strategy. Once you know these, it becomes a lot easier to write your newsletter, because you know what to include, you know what not to include. The step after this is to create a content plan based around this. But if you know what sort of outside your purview, oh, that doesn't actually serve this purpose. This isn't really the job that we need it to do. Oh, that doesn't actually provide value to my people. We're going to cut that out. So if with your newsletter, take a look at everything in relation to these three things, and see whether you think you're meeting these three pieces, whether they work. Knowing these things, you're going to have clarity of content. So clarity of content where you're not all over the place. People are going to know what to expect from you. That doesn't mean you're writing only about one thing ever necessarily. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to run out of things to say. But when you have a narrow purpose, there's a clarity to it, which means people become comfortable. They know what you're talking about, and you'll start in sales calls. People will start repeating back to you the things that you say in your newsletter, right? They'll be like, oh, I love how you talked about this, or they might not even reference your newsletter directly. They might say something in the exact same way that you said something. And it's like, oh, that's where that came from, right? Consistency. Now this is consistency of your content, consistency of your messaging, right? So knowing these things means that you can be consistent. So there's consistency and frequency, but there's also consistency in your messaging. And then altogether, it gives you a lot of confidence. I know that there's a lot of sort of nervousness about list size. There's also just like that idea of like, I don't know if people are interested in this. I don't know whether I should sell more or sell less. Knowing this stuff gives you the roadmap to be more confident with what you're sending out. Now, just see. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I just wanted to, let's see. I just want to open it up for questions, and let me just see. We're going to, Harry, if you're willing to come off mute, do you want to talk? I can't remember from before if you said you had a newsletter that you were working on.
No newsletter.
Newsletter.
I want to learn to see if it's something that I should be putting on my list of to-dos.
Yes, yes. Forgive me, remind me what you do.
So I'm doing estate consulting.
Right, right. Oh, that seems like it's got full of meaty content in there.
Mm-hmm.
Full of meaty content in there. Okay. Super brief description of how your service works and what you're providing to them.
Okay, so I'm going to be providing consultations with potential clients or clients to basically project manage their estate planning. So just basically get them ready with all the information that they need in order to actually put their documents in place. I can't actually do that for them, but I have lawyers that I work with. I have, there's online tools. So basically just prepping them for everything they need to think about, decisions they need to make. And then from there, I can also assist. I can actually also be appointed in their documents if they don't have anyone to appoint, so that when the time comes, I can actually take care of things for them. So it's a few different things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's it is so juicy with content ideas in there. So I think the who, you have to figure out, because it's not just everybody, right? So you have to
Mhm,
figure that out for sure.
mhm,
Um, and then the business goal is, I think we probably need to spend a lot more time talking about it, but the business goal would likely be to build trust, because that
exactly,
trusting somebody with that type of information, you require a high level of trust, right?
exactly. Yes.
And so there's a certain, with your newsletter content, you want to make sure that you're sort of showing that you're conscientious,
Mhm,
that you're considerate, that you value privacy,
mhm,
and that you're trustworthy, right? Um, and there's so much as far as the value for your newsletter subscribers that you could provide.
mhm.
You could go sort of broad, and here are all these different things that you need to consider in in uh, in content topics, such as like here are the different documents that you need, right?
Mhm.
Um, yes, making the process emotionally and technically as easy as possible. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and uh, not everybody needs, so I think this is the other thing, is that you also have to take into consideration um what's easy for you. So I'm going to come back to that. I'm just going to finish up with Carrie here. um yeah, so there's lots of content ideas there, and I think that's sort of, if you focus on making sure that you're building trust, so
Mhm.
figuring out what those pieces are. um,
Thank you.
does that help?
Yeah, I think I'm
There's
I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to realize, like, I just need to give them enough to show them that I know what I'm talking about, but not
Mhm.
too much that they're like, "Oh, I'm good." So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I think particularly in your case, there are places where you can probably come in and say, this will depend on this,
Exactly.
this, and this, right?
Exactly.
And sort of showcase that everything is individualized, and that it's not something that they necessarily want to be doing by themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Corinna.
Um, thank you. Okay. Sarah, so the idea of writing a 2,000 word essay weekly is not appealing for me. It's not appealing to most people at all. Deborah is a writer. She's the same as me. She comes from a background in magazine journalism. And so that's her natural mode of communication, writing lots. And one of the things when I work with my clients, part of the discovery, the research phase, is figuring out how they like to communicate and what type of content they like to create. So if you hate writing essays, that is not a format I'm going to recommend at all. If you love writing essays, maybe that is something to do. Maybe the frequency is different, right? Maybe the frequency that, there's always these questions about how how often should I send my newsletter? I'd say a minimum once a month. twice a month is more ideal. But it really depends. And part of that depends is on you, not necessarily just what's good for your business and what's good for your readers, right? What do you have capacity for? And so that comes hand in hand with the frequency, comes hand in hand with how complicated it is to put your content together, right? So maybe what you're doing is a roundup of resources for your clients for whatever it is, right? Or maybe you like doing video and you just do a quick Loom video of your people, and that goes out in your newsletter. So I think that's very, very important when you're doing your newsletter. And this is particularly for anybody who's sort of stalled on writing their newsletter, is to look at that. Is that part of the issue? Is that why? Is the format that I've set out for myself, is the template that I'm doing, does it just not suit how I actually want to create content, right? Yeah. Okay, let me just see. Yes. The reading part of the essay, that's something that you have to, again, whether your audience wants it. So Deborah's audience does actually want to read that content, and you see that in your open rates and your response rates, right? And this is, I think this who wants to read that, this idea that everything needs to be short comes down to the quality of the content. So I was posting about this on LinkedIn the other day, that if it's good, if it's interesting and it provides value, to some degree, the length actually doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Let's see, I'm just going through the chat here. I use my newsletter to share my thought partnership. I see it as a chance that my readers understand who they are working with when we work together, sharing my stance, sharing ideas, etc. Yes, Linda, exactly. That is when I talk about sharing sharing your expertise and building those relationships. That's what it comes down to a lot with newsletters. In the literacy world, I'm trying to share with literacy leaders important things to consider in their work. So I fluctuate on topics, but everything comes back to what should a literacy leader keep in mind? Yeah. What content would I want them to be thinking about if we worked together? Then I write to that. Yeah, that's exactly, and that goes to the what job is your newsletter doing? So you're talking about topics that you need your clients to know when you start working together, right? Let's see. Superhuman by Zion Khan. Frida, if you have a link to that, feel free to add it to the add it. And was there a question? Was there a hand I missed? Bianca?
Hi, sorry, I didn't want
No,
to.
that's okay. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand.
Thank you so much for offering this, and sorry I kind of came in a little bit late. Zoom loves to be a bit difficult at times.
Yep.
Um, but hi, my name's Bianca, and I'm a program and administrative coordinator for a small charity in Canada, in Toronto. And we offer mental
Excellent.
health programs to students, teachers, and parents.
Mhm.
So we work with different school boards to bring workshops and programs. And we do a newsletter right now, but it could definitely use some work. And I think one area that, after seeing your presentation, where I would love some advice, is figuring out for us kind of which audience to focus on, or if you would suggest us doing two different audiences, because right now I feel like our two biggest groupings is we want something for donors, so for people
Yep.
who donate to the charity, and then one for clients, which would be school principals and school boards that would be interested in bringing our programs to their school. And so doing
Yep.
that all in one newsletter is kind of what we've been doing right now, but I feel like it's probably not the best way to do it. Would you recommend us separating it, or how would you?
I I think you already know, yes, you need to segment your audience. So
Okay.
you'll probably have some content overlap between them. But you definitely, when you're talking to donors, the principals aren't going to necessarily care about that information. It's isn't relevant to them. And so you can segment your list. There's different ways to do it. Typically you tend to do it with tags, and then you send out an email directed just to the people with the tag of donor or principal or whatever. Yeah, and then you're almost you think of them as two different lists. So you're
Yeah.
almost developing two different strategies. There will be, like I say, there will be some crossover, but recognizing that audience piece of those three pie pieces is going to be different in those cases. And that is actually going to affect what those other two pieces are as well, because the value that they get from their newsletter is going to be different from a principal than it is for a donor. And what it does for your business, the job it's doing with the principals is to get you into those schools, but with the donors is to get them to give you money. So those are two different jobs, right? And it's not, the newsletter isn't performing that job directly. It's supporting those goals, right? So in some cases, the donor may click on a button and donate directly through the newsletter. But if you're looking at large size donations in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, then that's not a button in a newsletter, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
And if it's okay, can I ask a quick follow-up?
absolutely.
With the audience of donors, do you have any kind of tips on, in what ways to engage the audience? Would that just be, keeping them informed on kind of what we're up to, what recent projects have been going on?
That's the most important piece, is keeping them updated. It is also primarily in showing the impact that your work has, right? They want to see if they're donating to you or thinking of donating to you, they want to know that the money that they give you actually makes a difference, right? So that's things like sharing success stories, right? All your impact stories. The best way to sort of look at this is to go and subscribe to the newsletters of other nonprofits in
Okay.
your space, as well as in other spaces as well. That nonprofits delivering different types of services, and just sort of watch them over 2 to 3 emails. If they have an option when you sign up to click whether you're a donor or whatever, click the donor option so that you can see how they talk to their donors.
Okay, awesome.
And yeah, just watch what they do. You can also get some information from how they talk about it on their websites, right? Because they're probably use some of the similar information as well. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I have I won't be doing a newsletter for at least a year or so. And at this point that I don't have enough, I'm an attorney, and so I can't, there's a lot that I can't talk about. And if I talk about too much in detail, I won't be able to keep the confidentiality. But
Yeah.
so I'm thinking now though, how I tend to react on LinkedIn, and when I do a post that people think is really interesting, it's usually something that happened in the news and a nonprofit advocacy perspective on it. Yes, you can do this. No, you can't. And I'm trying to figure out how to, in the future, how to write something where I feel like I can do it. I have the knowledge that is not simply reactive. And how do I write it in a way that will be timeless? And so I'm trying to think through. I actually have so many questions, but that's the first one.
That's the first one. So I think that's a wonderful way to show your expertise, is by reacting, for sure. But like you say, you get stuck in that thing of like just reacting, like, oh, is there anything to react to? Part of that is you can set up Google, like Google News alerts, so that they come up more frequently. Again, subscribe to newsletters where they're possibly talking about these things, so that that content is sort of being more fed to you as opposed to sort of passively, so that you are more often exposed to things that you can react to. So that's one
I'm
small
sorry,
piece.
maybe I've been clear. I get a
Mhm.
lot of information that I
Oh,
do
okay.
react to, and
Okay.
what I'm worried about is that those reactions then, that like if I write a newsletter about that,
Mhm.
that it will be too timely, about that it won't be evergreen,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that but I think what I'm actually in asking the question, I got some of the answer, of that. Expand on it. This is an
Yep.
example of blah blah blah, and in general, you can always,
Yeah.
uh,
Exactly.
great, thank you.
Yeah,
And yeah,
exactly. And I
part of
think that the other thing that you can do is do anonymized amalgamations of things that you've worked on, right? You don't have to name anyone. You don't have to use specifics of the case or whatever the situation was. You can sort of and just be very upfront. This is an anonymized, amalgamized version of this story,
composite,
and
yeah.
this is why I want to talk about this. Or if you don't want to have that, just use it as inspiration. We're dealing with this particular thing. This is what I think about this, right?
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Favorite platforms and why. So I am platform agnostic. I don't care what you use. I think they're all the same, different versions of the same thing, six of one, half dozen of another. Um, it really comes right now. So I have used MailChimp. I've used sort of a very much larger one called Delivra. I've used what's the name of the other one? A couple that I can't even remember. Right now, I am experimenting with MailerLite and Kit. I know somebody who likes Beehive very much and works with that. I know someone else who uses Button Down. A lot of people right now really, really like Substack for their newsletters. Ghost is very good. And Ghost is actually a quite ethical platform as well, if that's a consideration for you. And yeah, in my mind, it really doesn't matter. Choose one and just go. Like that's the main thing. And if you're already on one, don't leave it until it's really painful to be on it. Like there's no point in just switching. Um, uh, yeah, it's I think the main thing to watch is, because we're talking about small lists, it's unlikely that you're going to surpass the like 1,000 or 2,000 threshold that most of them have for when the prices start bumping up. So in that case, mostly what you're looking at is the functionality. If you want automations, yeah, Ghost is the one that's quite ethical. What's ethical about it? To be honest, I can't even remember. We did the research. We're like, oh, this is great. Now I'm like, I don't remember.
Your word is valuable.
It's I believe so. There's open source. Also data privacy was part of it, and I don't remember what else in it. Yeah. We were just like, we really like this one, so I've used that. And I know other people that's been their primary reason for choosing that one as well. And yeah. Yes, Bev Feldman. I had the pleasure of speaking with Bev the other day. She is wonderful. If you want to know anything about automations with Kit, she is your gal. I do not do. Oh, yay! Hi, Linda. Yeah, she's wonderful. And when we were chatting, we realized a lot of our values around email sort of align very much. That sort of, not the overtly pushy sales tactics and selling things where people feel good about you being in their inbox, because there is always that hesitation when people go to sign up. They're like, am I going to get spammed with all this stuff? Yeah. So as we go, I just want to do a quick thing. If any last questions, I don't want to hold anyone up because we are at time. If you have any last questions, please feel free to email me, get in touch. I'm happy to chat, connect with me online. If you would like to work with me, you can book a call. There's my calendar link. And there is also a link for my email list. I know there was an option for when you signed up for this webinar to select to be on my email list. I will add everyone who did select that to my email list later. You can also self-add yourself through that link if you'd like. And you're going to be the first people on it. I literally set that up this morning. Newsletter person who's only just setting up their newsletter right now because I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So, yeah. Yes, thank you, Sarah. Thank you all so very, very much for joining. I cannot express how grateful I am to have had you here today. I hope you found it useful. Again, please get in touch if you have any follow-up questions, and I will send you a recording within the next day or early next week once I get that all put together. Thank you.